G'day gymnastics skill seekers, and welcome back to part 4 now of specific strength qualities for unlocking gymnastic skills. Today we're going to talk all about strength endurance. Now hopefully over the last 3 posts you've realised how important it is to build strength and gain some lean muscle so that we can master our body weight and unlock our gymnastic skills. Now although this is quite high on our list of priorities and our list of goals, strength training is also critical for our health and longevity. As we age, it becomes significantly harder to build strength and increase lean muscle mass. So it makes sense that while we're young, fit, and capable, we want to try to gain as much strength and as much lean muscle as we can, because there will be a point in our life where we hit that peak and then it's going to naturally start to come back down. So the more depth you have there, well, the longer you're going to have your independence and freedom, because it is strength and lean muscle that gives us our independence and freedom. And that's why I believe strength training is one of the most important things we can do for our health and longevity. There are loads of other benefits that come from strength training. Improved body composition, increased metabolism, improve bone density and bone mass, improve heart function and decrease blood pressure, increase in sleep quality and quantity, increase in immune function, improve mental health, a decrease in all chances of injury, and an increase in life expectancy. And the list just goes on and on and on, okay? That's just a few of the benefits that come from strength training. Now, the best way to build and maintain strength and lean muscle mass is to train for relative strength, functional hypertrophy, and hypertrophy. Now, these are the specific strength qualities that I talked about in parts 1, part 2, and part 3 of this series. So just a quick reminder what they are. Relative strength is all about training the neurological system and increasing our force output and force production. I covered this in part 1. Functional hypertrophy is a bit of a mix of relative strength and hypertrophy training. It's going to help us increase strength, and it's also going to help us build lean muscle mass. So it's both neurological and muscular system, so it's neuromuscular training. Number 3 is hypertrophy training. Now this is more muscular system training, and it helps us build muscle, so get muscle gains. Number 4 is strength endurance, and that's what we're going to talk about today. But it's all about improving aerobic fitness and the strength endurance of our muscles. Now, truth be told, if you want to be as strong as possible or you want to be shredded, lifting heavy weights and doing sprints is the best way to get there. And maybe that's a topic for another time. The topic of today is endurance training and how we can apply this to gymnastic strength training. So if we go back and we look at the relationship between the reps, percentages, and training effects table, we can see that strength endurance is best achieved at low intensities. We're talking less than 70%, and at high volumes. We're talking 13 plus repetitions. Now remember, this is just guidelines. This table is just giving us a basic idea of where we might look to train strength endurance. We could do sets of 20 push-ups that are going to still fit into functional hypertrophy if the time under tension fits into those training parameters. So when we're talking hypertrophy gains, remember the top end of that was roughly around 70 seconds of time under tension. So anything above that 70 seconds is now falling into more strength endurance. So if you're taking more than 70 seconds to complete the set, then you're moving into the strength endurance strength quality. So there are some hypertrophy gains that we can achieve with high volumes of work, but they're nowhere near as effective as sticking to the pure hypertrophy training parameters or potentially even working the functional hypertrophy training parameters. In fact, consistently training for strength endurance has negative impacts on muscle hypertrophy. But that's not the biggest problem. When we consistently train strength endurance, there is negative impacts on our strength development. There is this interference phenomenon in which people who lift weights and do endurance exercise simply don't get the strength or muscle gains that they'd expect. Now, if you're going to the gym every week and you're training hard to drop body fat, to build strength, to improve your overall health and performance, and you're not seeing results, chances are you're doing too much volume and not enough intensity. It's a common thing. People fall into the trap of thinking that more volume equals better results, but it's a lie. And I get it because I've made this mistake before. I used to be an endurance athlete and I used to spend a lot of time doing hundreds and hundreds of kilometers of swimming, cycling, and running, and it had negative impacts on my health. Yes, I was the lightest I'd ever been, but I didn't have any lean muscle mass, and I was very weak. I couldn't even do a single chin up. So that's not a good thing as we're aging. We don't want to have no muscle mass and no strength as we're getting older. That's going to take away our independence and our freedom. And that's why I'm not a fan of doing a lot of strength endurance training anymore. If you're an endurance athlete, I get it. That's the stuff you've got to do. But if you're not and you've got no reason to train for endurance, then it's really a waste of your training time. Well, that's the way I see it. Endurance training blunts the development of muscle, strength, and power. In the short term, it's going to blunt hypertrophy, it's going to blunt strength, and it's going to blunt power pretty quickly. In the long term, you're going to start to lose lean muscle and you're going to start to lose strength, which is detrimental to our health span and therefore our longevity. When you're doing endurance training, you really need to be on top of your nutrition. You need to be eating enough that's going to support the high volumes of training that you're going to be doing. And that's why the whole eat less and move more mentality is flawed, okay? That's the worst possible thing you could be doing. Eating less and doing lots more endurance training is going to have huge detrimental effects on your overall health and performance. Now, this is a big deal because we often see calisthenics and bodyweight enthusiasts pumping out high volumes of pull-ups, push-ups, rows, and more. So many wasted reps. Why is this such common practice? It doesn't make sense because it's detrimental to the goal of building strength and mastering our body weight. A lot of adults want to unlock gymnastic skills, but they lack the strength to master their body weight. They need to increase their strength, not destroy it. High volume strength and endurance training is a form of fatigue-based training. It fatigues both the nervous system and the muscular system, but not in a good way. It doesn't help us build strength. It actually destroys our strength. When we stop and think about it, if we're always fatigued, it's going to have downstream effects on the quality of the work we can productively do within a training session or even within a training week. It also increases the chance of injury, and not to mention the negative impacts that it has on our hormones, our mindset, and our motivation. No one wants to go to the gym and feel tired and fatigued before they even start their session. But if you're constantly doing high amounts of volume, that's just how your body's going to feel. It's not going to have a chance to recover the nervous system and the muscular system if you just keep beating it up every session back to back to back to back. We want our training to stimulate a positive adaptation that allows our bodies to grow stronger, leaner, and more powerful. The more high quality repetitions you can perform and recover from, the better your progress will be. So what about training to failure? Should you be training to failure? When we talk about training to failure, what we're really talking about is just doing as many reps as you possibly can until you fail the concentric phase. No longer are you aiming for a certain number of repetitions, you're just working until complete muscle fatigue or neurological fatigue, and you just can't do any more reps. Now, this is a popular technique that was used by many bodybuilders. And still today, if you go into any weights room, there's going to be a fair few people there that think that training to failure is the best way to see results. Now, I get the appeal. It's about taking strength training, which is something that is already intense, and just doing as much work as possible. The theory sort of makes sense, but what's the reality? Is doing this strength endurance training over and over again helping you, or is it hindering you? Again, I'm going to say more is not better in this case. In part 3 of the specific strength qualities for unlocking gymnastic skills, I spoke about the different types of muscle fibres, the fast twitch fibres and the slow twitch fibres. Now, the type 2 fast twitch muscle fibres have the most potential for strength and size gains. And the best way to target these type 2 fibres is with low to moderate volumes performed at high intensity. Strength endurance training targets the type 1 slow twitch muscle fibers. So if your goals are to build and maintain strength and lean muscle mass, which in reality they should be, you're going to want to train low to moderate volumes at high intensity. This is the best bang for your buck. So I'm not saying we should never train to failure. I wouldn't look at training to failure in terms of just doing volumes of work. We can train to technical failure by increasing the intensity of an exercise. Now remember, intensity refers to the percentage of weight being lifted in comparison to the 1 repetition max. So instead of chasing the number of reps, we're starting to chase the weight. We're trying to build strength here. Now, this is also very taxing on the nervous system, so we don't want to be going into the gym and trying to max out the intensity too often. Depending on the individual, we might test a 5RM, a 3RM, or even a 1RM every maybe 3 to 6 months. Now, I digress a little bit here, but I think it's important to say there is a time and a place where we can train to failure when we're testing maximum strength and we're using heavy loads or high intensity. I don't see the point in training to failure with maximum repetitions, talking about max volume. The risk to reward ratio isn't in our favor because it increases the chance of injury, and chances are you're going to be doing poor quality reps as you start to approach that max volume, and the benefits really are minimal. So why would we waste valuable training time and energy on something that doesn't help us achieve the goals, building strength and increasing that lean muscle mass? So you might be thinking, well, when do we use strength endurance training or this strength quality in gymnastics? Now, in gymnastics, a lot of athletes have to perform certain routines that require a certain level of stamina. There's ring routines, uneven bars, parallel bars, even the floor routines that we see gymnasts performing. Once the gymnast has mastered the individual movements, they can start to combine these into their routines. The gymnast needs to have the strength capacity to perform the routine, and that's something that they're obviously going to have to train for. But gymnasts don't train their entire routine all year round. They spend most of their training time building strength, increasing flexibility, and training the individual skills or movements that make up their routine. As they move closer to their competitions, they start to bring the movements together and gradually build the capacity to perform the entire routine. So a lot of strength and power sports follow the same sort of structure. During the off-season, the athlete focuses on becoming as strong as possible and training high intensities with low volumes. As they move closer to their season or their competition, they start to drop the intensity and prepare to peak on the competition date. Athletes who require high levels of muscle endurance or fitness levels will often start to train this closer to the competition. And that's because strength endurance and aerobic fitness is much easier to build than maximum strength. In 8 to 12 weeks, an athlete can build strength endurance or aerobic capacity, but maximum strength, that takes years to build, and we have to continue to train maximum strength because if we don't, it's something we're going to start to lose over time. Now, I often like to play around with gymnastics ring routines or even play around with some movements on the parallel bars, but I'm not going to the next Olympics and I'm not competing in any gymnastics events. So besides the fun or the challenging factor that comes with that and the enjoyment that I get from mucking around with that, there isn't really any other reason to incorporate, these routines into my training program. And I'm always making sure I'm doing the quality work, the strength work, and building the lean muscle at the start of the session, and then putting the routine at the end of the session. I'm also going to be doing maybe 1, possibly 2 routines in a week, if that, because it places an additional fatigue on the muscular and neurological systems. So it's going to slow down recovery and it's going to have an impact on the sessions that come after that session. So something to be mindful of there. So in conclusion, I'm not really a fan of training strength endurance for adult gymnastic skill seekers. I see it as a waste of valuable training time that could be better spent training strength or building lean muscle. I'd suggest that if this is your goal to build strength and unlock gymnastic skills, you want to focus more on strength training and flexibility training because that's going to lead to better results. Don't fall into the trap of doing pointless volumes of work, repetition after repetition after repetition. It's not going to help you. Stick to training strength qualities that will deliver the best results. Relative strength, functional hypertrophy, and hypertrophy are the best bang for your buck. I hope that makes sense. If you found this 4-part series on specific strength qualities for gymnastics skills helpful, please leave a comment below. If you've got any questions, don't hesitate to ask them in the comments. Thanks for watching, and until next time, happy training.